morning, everybody. Hope everybody's well. Happy Wednesday for those that are here live. Happy whatever day it is of the week that you are here. Thank you so much for being here. We've been talking about the idea of responsibility of time. We ended yesterday with this ritual called Modani. I was thinking yesterday if we should make cards or something for those that are interested. Talk to the Momentum All-Star team about what we can do. We should just have something on our nightstands or something to remind us in the morning how to begin our ritual. I hope you guys did it. I did it this morning. I was much more mindful today than usual. It helped me when I was getting up this morning. Just to be appreciative of the day that is in front of us. Just to be more of a steward of time. And we'll start delving a little bit further into, how do we tap into that energy so that we start the day off correctly. What we're talking today about a little bit is today is actually a day on the modern Jewish calendar called Yom Hazikaron. Yom Hazikaron is Israeli Remembrance Day. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I have, in general, when you grow up in America in a non sort of war time, it's easy to lose appreciation for the battlefield. When you grew up, if you grew up in the middle of a world war, if you grew up at a time where there was a draft, where people were being sent off to battle, when you grow up in a time in which you feel like you are constantly under pressure, the army plays a much different role in your life than if you were blessed to grow up in a time that's relatively of peace, or you're in a country that it's relatively secure. And it's easy for those who are not familiar, it's easy to take that for granted. It's easy to take soldiers for granted. It's easy to take an army for granted. It's easy to take, listen, God, I believe, provides the security, but we got to do our job. But it's easy to take peacetime for granted. And we don't realize that there's a cost for that. Even if you live in Israel, or you fly to Israel, or you visit Israel, for the most part, you're not on the borders. You're not in the raids. You're not defending. You're just enjoying the security that was provided by somebody else. Memorial Day in America, I believe, is a real holiday. I really do. I don't think it's a time to sit around and barbecue. I think it's a time to have, we say in Hebrew, hakarat hatov, hakaras hatov, appreciation for other people that are willing to put their lives on the line for our security. Now, this concept of gratitude for something that you may not fully appreciate is critical. This is where the empathy comes in. And for those who know or are either a soldier or a parent of a soldier, which I'm not sure which is worse, or which is harder, I shouldn't say which is worse, which is harder, you understand just what a sacrifice it is. Just what it means to send a child off to battle, to send a child off to an army, and the sleepless nights and the worries and the panic. And then for that own kid, and remember, these kids are 18, and unfortunately, in certain news outlets in the Western world, they seem to, I don't know if they enjoy it or it's good for ratings or it's part of their thesis, they seem to paint Israeli soldiers as older and crueler than they are. It's a tremendous travesty. And when we go to Israel with guys, which I'm blessed to do with Momentum, almost invariably in every single trip, what is shocking for most adult men who have never been to Israel before is that Michael just said that they're kids. They're 18, 19 years old. They're kids. And they are being trained and drilled and given responsibility for things that are well beyond their years. And they have no choice but to grow up really, 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 really soon. And these are the moments, I got an email from somebody about holidays and, whether it's a religious holiday or a modern holiday. And to me, it doesn't really matter. If you have an opportunity to pause your life and give respect, if you have an opportunity to stop what you're doing, even if it's not immediately relevant, and tap into a trait, especially the trait called gratitude, especially for something that you may not immediately feel. If you don't live on a border of an enemy, or if you don't live at a time where you feel like you are in the middle of a war, you may not need a Remembrance Day. But it's important that we become people that never gloss over the sacrifices of other people. For the parents, you know that it's important that your children begin to recognize how much you sacrifice for them. For children, sometimes that's the same thing for your parents, spouses, friends, even community members. I remember one time I calling a rabbi for advice years ago, and then I called him to tell him what happened, and he thanked me, because usually people call him for the negative, but they forget to call him for the positive. Believe it or not, sometimes community leaders are there just when people have problems, but no one remembers to call them when things work out. Nobody thinks they're human beings. I was talking to a minor celebrity recently, and he was expressing to me just how human he is. And when people come up to other people that are behind screens a lot, they're still human beings. And they make comments that are absolutely ridiculous sometimes. We forget that there are people that are sacrificing for us, even in things that we don't fully appreciate, but they're still sacrificing for us. And whenever we have the opportunity to become grateful of it, forget what it does for them. It's a tremendous upgrade for us. We become people that take nothing for granted. We become people that walk the streets and don't assume that we just deserve stuff. We become grateful human beings that start to appreciate the things in life that are invisible. That's a tremendous level, and one that God loves like crazy. When you start to appreciate the invisible. There's a great rabbi named Rabbi Avigdor Miller. To me, one of the most powerful stories. I want you to picture, he was one of the great rabbis of I guess, the 80s and 90s. He was living in Brooklyn. He was a tremendous leader, a scholar, a visionary. He was a tremendous spiritual leader. And one day his grandson walked into his house and found him. I think I told the story here or not. I'm sure I did. Andy would remember. And found the rabbi. I want you to picture the scene of an older rabbi with his head fully immersed in a sink of water. Can you imagine that sight? The rabbi, the white shirt, the beard, in the sink, under the water. His grandson walks in, and he's like, pulls him out. He says, "What's going on?" So his grandfather, dripping of water, says, on the way home, we were listening to the radio, and they were talking about the pollution, the air pollution. And I found myself getting upset. And then I thought to myself, you're upset about air pollution? Have you ever even appreciated the air? Now you're like thinking of air pollution. Have you even appreciated air? You get to breathe? That you live in a world where you can take breaths? So I came home, I filled the sink, and I wanted to show myself how lucky I am that I get to wake up in the morning and breathe. I want you to understand that's not like a childhood exercise. That was the work of one of the great rabbis of our previous generation. That's greatness. Greatness is the ability to appreciate the invincible. Greatness is the ability to appreciate the things that may not be at our doorstep. For those that don't live in the mind of the diaspora Jew, you may not realize what Israel means, not just from a perspective that we have a country, but from a perspective of a nation that has for so many years been kicked around. While God promised us we're going home, and to watch our homeland, regardless of where you live, to watch our homeland blossom. You could be a very proud citizen in the country that you live in, but there's always a peace in your heart for your homeland. And for whatever reasons that we don't understand, that homeland is still bought and developed through sacrifice. And what today really is the respect and the appreciation for those that we may not see, but that we owe a debt of gratitude for. For all the mothers and fathers that send their boys to battle, and girls. And for all the boys and girls that go off in the blossoming of their youth and face real risk because they're trying to do the thing that is what we believe to be of the greatest of importance. Today's a special day, regardless if you're a Jew or not, regardless of your level of observance, regardless of your appreciation for Israel. Today's a special day. And I remember it hit me like a ton of bricks when I was in Israel for the year. I was 17, 18 years old, and on today, Yom Hazikaron, our school took us to the cemetery. And in Israel, there's obviously multiple cemeteries, but they took us to one in particular with a ceremony, and I watched a family. And I just looked at some of the grave sites of these boys that went to battle, never to return. And my heart broke. But it reminded me about the strength of the human spirit, about what it means to sacrifice for a cause, what it means to have a cause bigger than yourself. In many ways, today is all about that. Today is about respecting the memory of those that gave the ultimate sacrifice for a cause that we believe in. To appreciate them, to stop for a moment. In Israel, they stop for a moment today, just like last week. And the sirens, I don't know if you've ever been there before. It's really powerful. I mean, really powerful. The country just stops as the sirens blow. And everybody stands in silence for a moment to give respect. It's tremendous. These are the things that make us great. Respect and appreciation and gratitude and recognition of somebody else's sacrifice, even if I don't know their name. Try today, or whatever day you're listening to this, just for a moment, to put yourself in the mind and the eyes and the hearts of one of these families, to appreciate their sacrifice for the things that we may take for granted. It makes us bigger, and it honors them. We share just for a few minutes in their burden. We share just for a few minutes in their pain and in their pride. And we recognize that we're all one people. Nobody wins without the other, and nobody loses without the other. But we have to remember that life is meant to be more than just the self-preservation of our bodies. And we have to begin to make sure that we all have causes that are bigger than us. we have to remember that if we live our lives for ourselves, then physically we may be healthy and safe, but spiritually we are deficient. One of the groups that I spoke once for a group here of soldiers that came back. There were Americans that went to Israel to be in part of the Israeli Defense Forces, and they came back. And I spoke to the head of the program, and he mentioned to me that a lot of the guys are suffering from, it's not real depression, but it's like that. And I asked him why. And he said, well, they're safer, they're more comfortable, they can make more money, but they're missing the cause. When they signed up to be part of the IDF, they were signing up for a cause. And when you live for a cause, there's a different type of living than when you live for your survival. One of the greatest ways that we honor those that sacrificed for a cause is by asking ourselves, am I living for a cause? Am I living for the betterment of other people? And am I willing to sacrifice myself for that? Am I willing to sacrifice my comfort for somebody else? Am I willing to sacrifice my time and energy and resources for the betterment of the greater good? Am I a soldier? Maybe not at the level of an actual soldier. Maybe not at the place in which I'm willing to risk life and limb. But all of us are soldiers in God's army. It's the words of one of the greatest rabbis of all time, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. He said that we are all part of the kingdom, and our job is to represent and serve the king, the ultimate king. And everyone has a job. But understand something, although I wish it weren't true. I believe, and this is what I was taught, is that it absolutely is, which is there's nothing in life that we're going to get that's worth getting without sacrifice. There is no life that we're going to live that at the end of it we feel was worth living unless we're willing to sacrifice along the way. Whatever it is that we want in life, we need to remember that the price is sacrifice. Sacrifice is how we emerge from a body to a soul. Sacrifice is how we emerge from a band of people that are walking back to a homeland, to a nation. Sacrifice is how we stand tall with the pride, with the flag of our people, knowing that we represented God in the right way. So whether you're engaged in a marriage or children or friends or community, it doesn't matter. We have to remember that it's the sacrifice that's going to get us there. And we remember it when we appreciate someone else's sacrifice, even if we can't feel it, even if we didn't grow up with it, even if we don't know anyone that went into it. Today's the day that we can become bigger people, stewards of time. How much everyone that's celebrating Yom Hazikaron would do anything for more time. We need to appreciate just how valuable time is. And we need to stand even with those that we don't know, that sacrificed for a cause that we respect. So take a moment today, regardless of when you're listening to this, and think about what must be going on in the lives of the soldiers and their families. Put in a prayer for them, even for a few seconds, that God give them comfort and strength and pride. and that every one of us can muster up the strength to sacrifice that which what we need to become the people that we're meant to be. And that we too have the strength to live a life for a cause. Because there's no greater life than a life living for a cause. That's what today represents for Jews and non-Jews around the world. This story is not just a story of the people that are living in Israel. This is a story that's much greater. Tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit more about it because tomorrow is Yom Hazikaron. But just for today, it's so important. We appreciate what we got. We appreciate what we have in life, time. And we give at least the appreciation to those that don't, because they sacrificed for the things that we enjoy. All right, everybody, have an amazing day. If you know someone in an army, why don't you reach out and say thank you for your service? It'll mean a lot to them. And if you don't, that's okay. Stop what you're doing 20 seconds. Put in a prayer for them, all of them. God listens. And maybe your prayer will do something remotely. And at the very least, let us commit ourselves today to living more for a cause. Because it's living for a cause that makes life worth living. All right, have an amazing day. Let's be big today. Looking forward, with God's help, to see you again tomorrow.